I'm pretty passionate about this topic, especially with the theme of enabling opportunities. Feel strongly that having the right people in your organizations in the right seats and having them have the ability to maximize their potential, their opportunities are key for you and your businesses going forward. So that's why I'm excited to have our panelists up here with us. Now, from an AgVend perspective, we think that technology can be a huge part in helping maximize efficiency and getting the most out of your team, but it really takes a holistic approach to that to attract, retain, and maximize your talent. So very thankful to have our panelists up here. We'll pass it to them. Going to ask them to do some quick intros, just who they are, their company, a little background about the size and the structure of their organization, and then one challenge that they have when it comes to this topic. So, Jeff, I'll start with you down there.
Okay. Thanks for having me. Good morning, everybody. So I'm Jeff Crissinger. I'm Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Agronomy for NuWay-K&H Cooperative. We're a small company in southern Minnesota and northern Iowa, focused centrally on agronomy and energy. So we don't deal with grain in that particular aspect. Relatively small company. We're about 86 full-time employees, and living in small town USA. One of our biggest challenges is I work out of a location in a town called Trimont, and the population of Trimont is about 700. Right, so we are not a destination company. Right, we're not a company out there where people are flocking to come to our location necessarily where we're at, and that's technically one of our biggest challenges that we'll discuss, kind of how we have to approach that later on today. Tying back to the previous conversation, we are a company that is working with the Nature Conservancy, and I encourage everybody here to work with those people or find contacts with those people. I probably wouldn't have said that 5 or 10 years ago. I would have looked at them more as a threat than a benefit. But that's definitely changed, and so I encourage everybody to do that and appreciate the partnership that we've had there. And then the other thing I'd mention is there was a lot of conversation about the food industry. Don't forget about the fuel industry. Sustainable aviation fuel is going to be a big player in this carbon intensity marketplace, and definitely going to play a role. Thanks for having me.
My name is Jason Worthington. I'm the Senior Director of Sales and Agronomy with MFA. MFA is a regional-based co-op based in Missouri. We do have retail presence in Kansas, Iowa, Northeast Arkansas, and we'll bleed over into neighboring territories as well. We have about 1,700 employees. Agronomy, grain, livestock solutions is our big focus. I personally manage our sales team, our agronomic support team, and when I say sales team, I even have to cross over to the livestock stuff. I am learning all the time from my guys on that, but sales is sales, right? But definitely, having that widespread area, I was just talking with the panel up here before we started. It's the challenges we face in that big of a footprint, it's different. We have the same small town USA problems, like trying to recruit somebody to Rich Hill, Missouri can be very difficult. Then we have some areas like, we're basically in the suburbs. We're on the edge of the suburbs in the rural area. You think we could recruit everybody there? Well, guess what? There's tons of employers looking for people in Kansas City and St. Louis that they know farm kids got that work ethic, and those are maybe even more challenging than a small town getting somebody to come back home, have one foot in their farm operation, one foot with the ag retailer. So everywhere's got their challenges. They're just unique in a lot of places.
Morning, everyone. My name's Haylee VanScoy. I'm the Director of Grain Purchasing and Risk Management for Heritage Cooperative. We're based out of the state of Ohio, and we have about 600 employees across 60 different locations spread out across the state. Our corporate office is based in Delaware, which is kind of suburb outskirts of Columbus area. And so we kind of obviously face the same situations and challenges there where, Alexander and Tyler kind of alluded to last night, 10% of the ag and food sector space is part of that employment in the U.S. and only 1.2% of that is direct on farm. And so when you're in a ag space, you're obviously wanting to hire ag people and farm kids and whatnot, and that's a really small labor pool. And so obviously we have shifted that mindset of trying to find non-ag sector employees. And again, we face similar challenges in Ohio. We're a very densely populated state. So we have challenges, with Amazon and the Intel project that came to Columbus, a lot of that tech space. So it's really had to, how do we talk about ag in a positive space? We put in long hours, we take passion and pride in what we do in feeding the world, and how do we talk to our potential employees about the benefits that we have in our industry?
We'll start there at the beginning of the process in terms of recruiting and attracting talent to your organizations. What is your approach to that, and is there any differences from the different roles within your organization, whether it's an operator or a manager, anything that you find successful or challenging? Haylee, I'll pass it back to you.
Sure. So we have a little bit diverse look. Obviously, we have our internship programs. Our ag technology space with college interns has been great. We've hired 3 previous interns now that work for us, so we've had some really good success there. We're also kind of working into that space for talking to more high school students and partnering with local FFA chapters, whether that's having them come visit our test plots for test plot demonstrations, having them visit our facilities, and kind of opening that door to what opportunities we have within the cooperative. My generation was kind of the last big push of, college is the only answer and this is where we're at. And I'm glad to see that has shifted, that you can go to a trade school, you can stay in your local community and make an impact there. So that has really helped us. We've also had some, succession planning opportunities. So we've been trying to grow within. We have some leadership opportunities for younger generations. Obviously, in my role, I'm 5 years into my career and did not expect to be where I am today, but very thankful for that. And that's where we see this big shift of, you have a lot of people 5 years or younger in their careers, and then you've got 25 plus years, and we have such a big gap in how we fill that, both knowledge-wise and skill-wise.
Yeah, I'll echo one of the comments that Haylee. I wanted to say Hallie. I knew I was going to say it wrong. So I've made that mistake too many times. One of the comments Haylee made is that there's not enough farm kids being made to keep up with the demand. So how do we look at the folks that are ag adjacent, right? Or I stole that term from one of my district sales managers that does a fantastic job of recruiting and thinks outside the box. In sales roles, another thing we look at is there's a lot of kids that we'll meet at a career fair at a college, or a young man that's on the farm but is looking for another role. But I could see potential in that person, but I said, if I send him out to talk to that 4,000 acre farmer that's a key client at that location that he's going to get his lunch handed to him, right? What are the positions that there's a need for, and give him the exposure to meet with those guys, work through those challenges, have those conversations with the producer, but not put him in a position to fail, right? Where can he gain those experiences? So often in the past, we've been guilty of, well, we'll put him in the warehouse. We'll put him in a tender truck where he talks to nobody all day long and he has no satisfaction from that. I'm not saying they're not doing those things, but can we go have him walk a field, tell him to look for these 5 things, come back with a report on this, give him the template on what he needs to communicate about, and have a mentor working with him. Can he gain that experience, or can she gain that experience, right? Where are those things that we can build that person up a little bit? I think that's really important, especially when we talk about the guys that don't have that much experience on farm. You have to give them those experiences so they can talk intelligently with our producers, our core customers.
Yeah, us being in a small town, and like I said before, not necessarily being a draw that people are looking to run to, we have to create strong relationships with people that are already in our area, that know the area, know the lifestyle, and want to stay in that area, right? So, one of our main sources of talent are our customers, right? Their kids. And in a lot of cases, they're kids that are looking to come back to the farm eventually, but the farm's not quite sizable enough to bring on another individual. And so they're looking for a job off the farm until they can either scale to the point that they can sustain more family members or pass the torch onto those new people. And that can become a challenge in itself, right? Trying to maintain an employee that has a certain hour requirement in ag retail. Obviously, we're super busy the same time the farm is super busy. It's a very delicate balancing act that we're starting to try to work through a lot of the time. But to try to find some of that talent, we also do internships. We try to find people, sometimes they're coming right out of high school, but they know that they want to come back to the area. Part of the struggle there is sometimes we find them a little bit too soon, right? So we find them going into their first year of college and try to start creating that relationship and capturing that relationship then. And then usually we can get them to do a second year internship in a little different role. But then, they want to go try an internship at another company in our area and see something a little bit different. And then unfortunately, we might lose contact with them for that junior year, senior year in college, and then have to reconnect. So that's another difficult part. I think one of the things that we've done that's been really successful that we really have started to put a focus on in the last couple years is having our own employees look for others that fit into our company demographic through our referral program. Those are the people that know our company culture. Those are the people that know the other people in the area that might be looking for employment or might be looking for a change. One or two people, just an HR person in our company or me as a manager of a sales staff can't be the only ones looking for talent. It's got to be just about everybody in our company that's paying attention to that. And we try to reward those individuals well. I think that we give them $100 to get somebody in for an interview. And then if they get hired, I think they get $500. If they're there 6 months, they get another $750, the person that's doing the referral. If they're there a year, they get $1,000. If that employee is there 2 years, they get another $1,000. So we try to drag our referral program out over a couple of years to reward that person over time to find employees that fit into our culture, into our demographic, that are gonna turn into long-term employees, because it's really important for us that once we get those employees that they stay with us because of the limited talent pool.
And Jeff, I'll ask you a little bit more about the culture piece, as Alexander talked about last night. And if you hear anyone at AgVend talk about this pretty frequently, it's culture there, right? It's the basis of a lot of our hiring decisions and how people fit in the organization. What does that look like from your hiring process and how you bring people into the organization?
Yeah, so one of the main things is giving employees a voice. And again, being a small company, I think we can do that better than a lot of larger companies, to be honest with you. I manage 10 people directly. All 10 of those people are in the same office that I'm in, right? So communication is very effective, very efficient. Information sharing, idea sharing is extremely efficient, right? You can just walk down the hall and you can talk to somebody else about a question you might have. And that's particularly helpful with the younger generation that comes in. They've got resources right there down the hall to help them learn the business, and that's huge for us. Another thing I'll mention is that we've got a brand and an image, and in that is a brand promise. there's 3 items in our brand promise. It's diversified, innovative, and exceptional value. Those are the 3 things that we try to focus on and center our decision making around as much as we possibly can. I'm particularly interested in the innovative process. That's what I really like. I like reaching out and finding the new things that are coming to the agronomy world and trying to figure out how we can implement that into our business and bring that actually down to a functional item at the customer level. I think we have a tendency to be on the front end of some of that innovation. Some might call it the bleeding edge. We try to not be quite that far, but it's not painless to be an innovative company. But I think we are pretty well known in our area for being on that front edge of technology and innovation. And innovation equals progressiveness, right? So it does display an image out into the marketplace of us, even though we're small, being a very technologically progressive company. And that helps us create interest from those looking for those types of employment. And I think that the ag economy or the ag industry in particular has just got a tremendous potential for innovation moving forward. That, like Haylee said, maybe those aren't ag people. Maybe those aren't people growing up on the farm that want to come work in the agronomy sector now. Maybe those are people that want to fly drones for a living, or want to work with some of the data tools or the sustainability tools, right? That we're trying to develop. So being on the front edge of innovation is part of our brand promise and something we really try to live every day.
Yeah, I can't argue with anything that Jeff mentioned there. Innovation is a big part of our core values, and that's going to attract a lot of young people there. One of our other core values that I think it kind of, in the past few months, I've been thinking about it a lot more. When we talk about turnover and what culture plays in recruiting and retention and things like that is accountability. And what I've come to realize, some of our best leaders that have done a great job of retaining talent is the ones that are the most accountable. And too often, I think when I look at the guys that on our team that have struggled with more turnover, is they don't really have that engagement and accountability with their group. And the funny thing about it is the reason they don't have that accountability is they have feared turnover and upsetting that teammate so much. Now, I'm not saying go out there and be overbearing or demanding or anything like that. We have to engage, though. The problem that happens if we don't stick to our core values and our mission or our value proposition, right, is that if we don't have that understanding of what the bigger goal is, that's when it comes apart. This, to be quite honestly, is one of the things I'm most excited about bringing AgVend on is hopefully having more transparency on some of those key metrics that the accountability is more apparent to our teams, and it's things we can engage on and seek improvement on, right? I had this conversation with another one of our district sales managers the other day, and he was dreading a conversation about needing an improvement with one of his team members. And I went to him, I said, Adam, well, whenever you and I have an issue, what do we do about it? He goes, well, you let me know about it. I go, and then what do? We talk about how we're going to improve on it. I was like, if you just let him slide, do you think he's engaged or disengaged, right? I think back to, I use a lot of football analogies. When I was playing football in high school, we had a kid on our team named Jimmy Ward. I was obviously an offensive lineman. If anybody was guessing cornerback, you were wrong, right? So, but me and the other guys in my senior year that were on the starting line got the majority of the reps, right? The second team got quite a few reps. There was an offensive lineman on our team. There was no cut rule back in the day. He was about 5'4", 140 pounds, and the slowest of all of us on the team. He got 1 rep at practice every day. And every time when he got done, what did coach say? Good job, Jimmy. And just let him move on, right? If we're just saying good job, Jimmy, and not engaging with folks, we're too afraid of that accountability word. I think culture suffers and retention suffers. We've seen it when we made a big shift in our company about 4 or 5 years ago. Accountability got really ramped up. Guess what? We lost a lot of people early, but we're not losing them now. We are keeping them where that accountability is matching what our intent is. So, sorry, got a little long-winded, Patrick.
I think that's a pretty interesting statement, and I think that's one thing that a lot of people fear in today's employee market is that you have to step pretty softly so that you don't upset those employees and don't want to lose them, right? Because they're so hard to find in the beginning. But I 100% agree with it. If you let people do things or reward people for things that they're supposed to do all the time, even though that's kind of expected by today's generation, you got to be careful what you create and how you create that expectation. And so I think that was a great comment.
I think, kind of tying into both what Jason and Jim have said here, highly engaged employees are 75% less likely to leave if we are engaging with them and we are communicating with them what is the vision for our cooperative for the future. Letting them have a voice, as Jeff said, and engaging them in projects and either taking the strengths of their skills and growing on that, and how can we build them up and learn new things and help them have these experiences. Because the employee in the cooperative that started from the bottom and worked his way all the way up, they are very crucial and beneficial to our cooperative and our success, but we don't have a lot of that nowadays. The loyalty with companies, whether it's the farmers or employees, we see people just shift because they like the best price, whatever. Relationships are very important, but it's harder to keep that integrity, and that's where values kind of play in. For Heritage, obviously customer service, integrity, continuous improvement, and being a good partner are 4 of our core values. And so that's what we look at in our performance reviews. With my team, we have regular one-on-ones to check in on, where is your career trajectory? How can I help you get to where you want to be? And thinking about the future with that. And then we, I obviously don't work in the same office as my direct reports, so technology and communication plays into that, whether it's a Teams meeting, we have monthly calls there, and utilizing other opportunities to continually grow our employees and take them to the next level to help us be at the next level.
Well, in terms of investing in employees, is there anything that you do, either structured or unstructured, to help people along their career path? It's shown that, when people feel like they've been invested in by an organization, it helps with retention. So is there anything that your organizations are doing on that front?
I have 2 things I guess I can add there. One being my team directly, one of their goals when it comes to reviews is that they have to partake in a personal or professional development opportunity yearly. Whether that be, training, our brokerage that we work with is StoneX, and they provide a lot of great resources and trainings for us. So whether that's attending something like that, whether that's being involved in your local community, whether it's Farm Bureau, your fair board, whatever, that all counts. I want to see engagement. And that is where, from a cooperative base, if we are within the community and we are engaging in the community, that benefits us as a whole. And then also from the opportunities that we provide for growth within, we have a leadership program that is not necessarily just for your directors and your CEOs and everything every year. It's your growth in, the branch level, whether it's an agronomy assistant manager or your grain operator who showed a lot of potential, we invite them to this leadership retreat to really help them see that vision of where the cooperative is going and help build their skills to better manage our team as well.
We have some of those structured programs. We have the internships, we have training programs, we have things like that. But in reality, those things are good. In reality, it's the other things that we put into practice that maybe aren't even stated. But when, for instance, if we have a location manager that has a track record of developing people really, really well, and we find a high-value employee, is there a way we can get them to work at that location instead of the one that they're at currently? Are we pairing people up together the right way? They may have to drive a little bit more, and we may have to talk to them about why we need this decision made. And sometimes you can be transparent about it. It's like, hey, if you want to move up, this is where you're going to learn to do it. I think it's using your people that are those mentors, those leaders in the field, making sure they're paired with those guys that you recognize something in is probably the most effective thing that I've seen done with our organization.
Yeah, I think that part is pretty important. You know, unfortunately, I don't know anybody in our company that says they have time on their hands, right? And so a lot of them aren't looking to take on that added responsibility or mentorship. We do it through our intern program. It works really, really well. But trying to convince some of the employees that they should take the time to develop others is difficult. But I agree. I mean, there's definitely people in the company that do a better job than others when it comes to that particular development. From a leadership standpoint, or I'll say from a training aspect, our company in particular, it's probably one of the biggest things that we need to work on. We're doing employee development plans. We just started that in the last year or two, of which I'm painfully behind on, and I need to get that done. But we've taken that step to try to engage the employee more. So hopefully they can dictate their path or communicate their path a little bit better. We do employee surveys on a regular basis, and we always ask the question, would you like more training? And the answer is always, absolutely. I'll take any training that I can possibly get. And there's no specifics in that, right? The employee doesn't give us the specifics as far as here's the training I want, right? So that leaves us guessing then a little bit as far as what the employee is actually looking for, because then we can take investment, both financially and time investment, get them into a training that, maybe that's not what really interested them in the first place, and they only get 60-70% of the value out of that training, right? We need to do a significantly better job engaging the employee in that conversation of them telling us, here's the steps I want to take within the company, here's where I see my career path is. And encourage them to be part of that conversation, where at times I think management, thinks that they're the ones that need to make that decision on behalf of the employee. So definitely something we got to be more engaged in. From a leadership standpoint, and I know a lot of other states have this opportunity. I know South Dakota has it. I believe there's a Texas version of this. But if we want to try to develop significant leadership in some of our team members, there's a program called Minnesota Ag and Rural Leadership. They're probably on their 12th or 13th, or I lose track class. I've been around long enough that I was in their third class. And we encourage our employees to go through that, and we pay for our employees to go do that. What's significant about that, that's a huge time commitment for the employee, right? So it's 3 days a month, in the off months, so not spring and fall, but in the off months, where that employee has to prepare to go to this training, attend the training, and then catch up when they get back. From a financial investment, it's extremely cheap for us. I think it costs like $6,000 for this 2-year program for this leadership development. but we afford the employee the time to go. Not very many people are willing to take on that level of leadership training or that level of leadership commitment because of the time investment involved. So you kind of got to time that out a little bit as far as who you're asking to do that. Does it fit in with their personal life? Especially, does it fit in with their family life? How many other things do they have going on outside of work? And can they commit that time? But that is a program that really, I would say, enlightens employees. They travel all across the state of Minnesota, and then there's an international aspect where you'll go travel somewhere for 2 weeks internationally at the end of that program. That helps give people a lot of perspective as far as what's going on out in the world, and we find that those people can bring that back then and help us think bigger picture than, like I said before, just small town USA, right? See the bigger picture. So we've been really successful doing that and try to get people engaged in that. And then one thing in our operations department, so the people that apply the chemicals and the fertilizers and the other things that we sell, we've got a program called a Step Up program that's just been implemented in the last couple of years, right? And that has done a really good job of recognizing those types of employees as far as making progress in their own development. So through that program, maybe they're running a piece of equipment today that applies dry fertilizer, right? Well, if they take the step to learn another piece of equipment, so a little bit of cross training, then they might get financial incentives to do that in the form of more pay. They get recognized in front of the group for taking the effort to do that. And we become more diversified and more cross-trained in the process, which in turn gives other applicators more flexibility to do some other things. So that Step Up program has been really good. It's been really positive in our operations crew. That's where we have the most turnover in our company, are the people that are doing those types of jobs. And I feel it brings them a feeling of more value and more importance in the company, and it's something that they can be proud of. To show that they're making progress in their job role.
All right, let's spend a few minutes on a topic that could probably take a lot of dialogue, and sometimes I feel like could go to criticism pretty easy, and that's generational shifts and changes within the workforce there. I guess from your all's perspective, what have you noticed between the different generations entering the workforce, and has it changed how you manage in certain ways?
Yes. So I found it interesting. In my prior role as a staff agronomist, I had an intern with me. He was about 2 weeks into his internship. Was riding along with me on a way to a complaint call that we were on, and he reached over and shut off my radio. Which, first of all, that was not the right move. So anyway, he says to me, he goes, "Let's brainstorm." I was like, "Okay, Sam, let's brainstorm." He goes, I'll just use first names. Joe's about ready to retire. I want Joe's job. Joe was a vice president at MFA. Okay? This guy was 2 weeks into an internship, and his experience in ag before that was washing windows on the tenant who was his grandfather was the landlord of this farmer, and he would, that's literally what his job was, a few hours a day washing windows for that guy. Now he had some other pluses. Sam was an all right guy, but I looked at him and said, "Sam, what qualifies for you that job?" "I just really think I'd be good at it." I mean, that's an extreme example, but guys are more worried about their next job, or I'm painting with a very broad brush here, but there is a theme that very much so millennials and maybe the Gen Zers, I'm seeing it dissipate a little bit, are more worried about their next job than their current job. So the things we've talked about, seeing a path to opportunity, to improvement, very, very, very important with those folks. You have to engage with them on their path to improvement. That's one of the biggest things I've seen. The other thing for the generational side, work-life balance is continuing to be important. And I'll tell you, it's probably getting important under all generations that I've noticed, including from the boomers to the Xers to millennials and Gen Z, but it's probably more and more important for those young folks earlier in their career, right? What advantages does ag have in that regard, right? I heard the last panel talk about the seasonality of our farmers. You know, they're super busy 6 months of the year, not so busy the rest of the year. To truth be known, ag retail, there's parts of the year that are less demanding than the others. How can we leverage that? We have certain locations that can do that better than the others, depending on their level of feed and agronomy services, whether they take grain or not. It's not a cookie cutter, but how can we leverage our advantages in that seasonality where you may go like mad for a certain period of time, but it ain't so hard to get into a deer stand another part of the year, right? Those are some of the things I see.
I can kind of go ahead and piggyback off that. So one of my mentors, he works in the agronomy industry, and he also teaches an ag sales class at one of the local ag universities. And earlier this year, he did kind of a ag hoc, survey with his classes and asked them, would you rather take $50,000 and not have to work nights and weekends, or would you rather have $100,000 and work nights and weekends? What do you think that percentage was of what that breakdown was? 75% would take $50,000 and not have to work nights and weekends. And that ties into that work-life balance. And not necessarily just to be in the deer stand, but we see a lot of our ag communities and farmers that have to have off-farm jobs. So they need that extra time to be able to do their own farming and be able to try to make a living in what they're passionate about. They want to work for the ag industry, and they have to have a job to support their farm as well to make it all happen. What kind of opportunities can we look at to help with that? So that's something I guess we kind of see from a generational difference and shift. How can we leverage some of those opportunities?
Yeah, I think we all got a common theme here as far as that the expectations of the employee in today's world has changed, and I'll give you a little perspective. And if we're identifying the old guy on the stage, that's me. Okay? I've known Tracy Linbow my entire career. So 28 years I've been with my company, and it's the only company I've ever worked for. And through that process, I've gone through multiple phases. I've probably had 7 or 8 different job roles in my company. And my perspective, and it's still true today for me, is that when I started with NuWay-K&H Cooperative, I felt I was pretty damn lucky to have a job and was very thankful for the employer for giving me that opportunity and trusting in me enough to do the job role that they were asking me to do, right? Which created a significant amount of dedication from me back to the company, right? And I still have that today, right? I feel extremely fortunate that they're allowing me to come to work every day and haven't told me to go home yet, okay? I think that's completely done a 180 now and has changed significantly. I think the employer today, or the employee today, has the opposite mentality. They look at the employer and they say, you are extremely lucky to have me as an employee, and here are the things that I need from you for you to retain me, right? And so they've got significantly more leverage today than what they had before, right? Everybody's looking for workers. They've got opportunities to have less hours with higher pay, right? And that is really hard in our industry Our operations people want to know, am I going to work past 5 today? Because I got my kids to pick up from daycare and we got, he's got a basketball game later today, right? So they want to know in advance, am I going to be working past 5 2 days from now, right? So workload transparency is really important. And then that work-life balance that everybody else talked about, right? We do a program in our company. Again, it's another operations program, which I feel they've had to be really innovative because of that turnover factor that we look at. They've started doing a program called Scheduled Day Off for our operations employees, right? And that happens during the busiest times of the year. So 8 weeks in the fall, 10 weeks in the spring. Operations employees can sign up for the program, and then once they know the pool of employees that are interested in this program, they schedule a day off for that employee during the busy season, and it's 1 day per week. You're guaranteed to have a day off on this day, this week, and then when you get to that time frame, you can decide, do you need it? Do you want to take it to do personal things that you haven't had the chance to do? Or are you going to choose to work and get overtime pay or whatever incentives might be there? Now, that gives us the opportunity to decrease incentives when we are really behind on workload and we feel, you have the opportunity to do scheduled day off, but maybe here's a little more added incentive for you to stay and work. It becomes a win-win there, to where the employee feels good about it. They feel that if they stay and work, that they're getting more rewarded than maybe what they would have. But they can also choose to take that day off if they feel they need to and get some personal things done, whatever that might be. And I think that's been a flexibility thing that we've brought into a job role that typically doesn't allow much flexibility, to help with that situation of balancing things during those busy times of the year. Knowing those people in advance, like I said before, gives us the ability to cross-train and cover that person's job role for that day, expecting that they're not going to be there, so it's not sudden either. So it's been a really good program. Our operations guy is in the audience, and I would encourage you, if you want to know more about some of the things that they're doing in their particular department, talk to him. His name's Jake Oldenburg.
All right, one last question for me before we open it up to questions from the audience or any additional comments that anyone wants to add their perspective to. Let's talk about driving efficiencies and kind of maximizing the output. Are there technologies, process, tools that you've put in place in your organization to help make the experience easier for your employees, help them get to the high value work that's the most important to the organization?
Yeah, I'll start out. Digital contracting through the AgVend portal has been really, really significant for us as far as driving efficiency. And so perspective on that, we started with AgVend and we launched April 2021, right? Prior to that, the way that we did contracts and payments with the grower was this. The salesperson would put the order into the system. Somebody in the company would track that, see that order, print that order out, right, and mail it. And then they'd keep track of it on a spreadsheet to see if that contract ever came back, right? And sometimes it did, and a lot of times it didn't, right? And then through that tracking process, if they said, it's been 7 days and that contract's not back yet, well, we should print it off and we should mail it out again. And hopefully it'll come back this time, right? And we did that repeatedly. The volume of contracts that we go through as far as when people are buying crop chemistry or crop nutrients, that's a significant amount of time and effort and paper and resources. And that person is doing what I would call low value work, right? That they don't enjoy at all, right? But it's something that needed to be done at the time, right? AgVend has given us digital contracting now. And that's basically taken the person that was doing that low value work and freed their time up to do more meaningful things, right? Which we get more out of the employee. The employee feels more satisfaction because they're doing more meaningful things, and we're much more efficient with the contracting process. Tied to that is the digital payment, which has been huge, right? 2021, I think we did $0 worth of digital payment. And our company, to some of you might not sound like a lot, but we're probably getting close to the 15, maybe $20 million digital payment range now in just that short period of time. Again, it's all about efficiency and reducing how many times somebody has to touch something so that they can invest time in the more valuable job roles or spending time with their customer. Digital payment's been huge. We don't have to wait for money to come in the mail anymore. We don't have to send somebody out to pick up the check because it's a deadline today and I need to have your payment today, so today's the day I'm going to spend all day going around and seeing 15 of my customers and picking up their checks so that I can get it into the system on time, right? That efficiency's been really, really huge. The other thing I think we're looking for AgVend for quite a bit is, if we're struggling with employees and having issues trying to get work done, how can we empower the customer to do self-service? If they know they need to come in and pick up a load today, why do they need to call one of us so that we can take that call, put it into the system, send it to dispatch, and then let the guy know that it's in the system and he can come pick it up, right? Why can't that customer just create that document that goes directly to dispatch and it doesn't necessarily need to touch us, right? So I think we're using AgVend from an automation standpoint to take steps out of the process and become more efficient, right? Take a 3-step process to a 2. Take a 5-step process to a 4. Get rid of 1 step through digital efficiency, and that frees up time for people to do more valuable and meaningful work.
Yeah, I think one of the things, so where we're at in our partnership with AgVend, our go live is in December. Right, Garrett? I got the date right. Probably the bigger push is going to come in January with our team. A lot of the training will be in place and then push out to our customers. So I'm going to start with the first efficiency that we've already probably realized goes back to some of the speaker from John Deere last night, is that connected fleet and the central dispatch that has come from that. The amount of time it has saved some of our locations is just incredible. The number of the working time we've had, that stat showed about 29% of a machine's time being active. I'll tell you, in some of these places where it's 12 9-acre patches on a half section, right? We would have killed for 29%. We were in the low teens, and even in some of those places, we're getting closer up to that 20-30%. We've got guys in wide open river bottom areas that are pushing over 50-60%, right, on some of those machines in certain places. When we got the fertilizer house capacity, when we have the tender capacity, match it. But we've been able to match all those things better, right, because of that connected fleet. That's been huge. So that's more on the operations side. More what I'm personally involved in on the sales side is, guys, we have attempted to implement CRM tools. I'm sure our ERP is not much different than a lot of folks. It's very good at organizing all the data in the background, but it is not the most friendly and conducive thing for a salesperson to use. I'll tell you the biggest thing that sold me on AgVend for my input from it, I wasn't the only decision maker in it, is everything I've been shown so far, it starts checking the simple box, or at least simpler than what we have. So if you have, I think that's part of Jeff's point, if you have a salesperson doing fewer administrative tasks and engaging with customers more, can they cover more accounts? The reality of where we're placing some of those assets to get more efficient, fewer assets but higher capacity, the reality of the labor market that we talked about, I'm hoping AgVend does enable us to do more, get further down our plans of customer segmentation. Who are those growers that just come to the location? Is it easier for them to do that? Or let a manager just handle that? Can we segment not just our customers, but our sellers? Can we let hunters go hunt? Can we let caretakers increase share of wallet? Can we place them? When you do that, you know, a caretaker in theory can handle more accounts. A hunter, it's much harder to prospect. They need fewer. But do we get more efficient per seller? I'm excited about the promise I see in AgVend enabling us to do that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Jeff and Jason have said between, streamlining the processes, streamlining the amount of platforms that we use kind of into one within AgVend has really helped. I know, especially on our agronomy side. From the grain side, the CRM system has been huge. As I mentioned earlier, that kind of gap between your 5-year or less people coming in and your 25 plus year people getting ready to retire, how do we manage that relationship moving forward, and how do we continue being able to service our customers in the ability that we need to and not have to start from square one? So I've really encouraged my team to work on putting notes in, using that CRM system, and how can we better communicate with our growers for cross-selling opportunities. And, a big goal of Heritage is kind of breaking down barriers and working across divisions and, working together with silos and all of those things. A lot of us have those same goals and how we do that. And, some of you I've talked with on our peer group calls that we had with AgVend that were super helpful of talking about different ways that we're using the platform to create these cross-selling opportunities and get our grain merchandisers or originators out with our agronomy salesmen. Or, one of our initiatives that our marketing team did before harvest was trying to create a benefit for propane, increase in our propane sales for grain dryers. And we were able to easily, figure out who that tag list was of who has on-farm storage and who can we target those customers. So that segmentation and targeting is definitely going to be super beneficial for us.
Well, are there any questions for the panelists or additional comments here? Oh, got one in the back there.
I could probably do without a mic. I'm Christina Sidbeck with Ag Partners, and just curious, we're going down the road of doing a very detailed onboarding process for any new hires. In the past, it's been HR sits with them, IT sits with them, get their login, and you kind of turn it over to the branch manager. And it hasn't worked. There's a lot that's missing, and we feel like that's where a lot of the turnover is coming from, is they don't feel cared for enough and got the resources they needed in the beginning. So we've been working on it for probably about 6 months, and starting actually with some of the new hires that happened 6 months ago, trying to run some of them through this onboarding process. Have any of you guys gone through or implemented a deep onboarding process? And if so, what have your successes been? What are things that are working?
Haylee's probably the best to answer this, but we go through a similar process, right? And we try to get those people touch points in the different parts of our business that they're not going to be working in, so that they can get some familiarity. That's successful to a point, but I tell you, it does not replicate somebody spending a significant amount of time in the company and actually working in those job roles to better understand them as they move up through the employee chain. Unfortunately, employees don't give us enough time to do that nowadays, right? They're not as willing to start, in a lower level job to work their way up to a higher level job. That takes too much time. And like Jason said, they're ready to manage right now and today, right? So I don't know that I have a good answer, but I have a similar pain. Somehow you have to replicate those people having those job roles so they better understand the mindset. So when they are in management, that they can make decisions that relate to the people in those job roles because they've been there and they know it. But that's a super hard thing to replicate in today's business.
So I think one of the things that when we think of onboarding, an error that we make is trying to do too much, right? And I think we need to change our mindset sometimes from onboarding to continuing education, right? Or continuing support. Because think about all the things you've learned in your career. Did you learn them all in the first week, first 3 months, whatever it is? No, we continue to learn those things. And I'm guilty of the. I'm speaking of this from my own failures in the past. I've in the past often tried to tell everything I thought they needed to know in one period, and they end up drinking from a fire hose and getting very little out of it. What we need to do is give them what they absolutely need to know, and then give them the resources they'll have and the structure that they can fall back onto to continue that education. I think scheduled follow-up is far more important than onboarding. And I think that's the mistake we look at is let's onboard them so they're not lost. All we do is put more effort into a short period of time or more complexity in a short period of time, but in the end of the day, we're still just throwing them the keys, right? It's that follow-up afterwards, the measurement of improvement and success and all those other things. That's what they really want, because then the path to the advancement becomes more apparent.
I can kind of speak specifically. You guys still hear me? There we go. All right. I can kind of speak specifically on the grain side. And, you know, I've just hired a new kid fresh out of college in January. And obviously he's got some background. He has an ag business degree. He has all, you know, the skills and whatnot to learn. And I kind of did that same thing where instead of just like, okay, you're going to be here at the office the whole first week, I'm going to teach you everything there is to know. It's information overload. I kind of took at least the first month and had him come to the office where I work at 1 to 2 days a week. And we kind of spent some time, working through some different scenarios. Obviously, from the grain origination standpoint, it's a lot of like contract offerings and systems and getting them, logged into all the platforms we have, all this kind of stuff. And we spaced it out a little bit. And that definitely helped quite a bit from that aspect. Our HR team does have an onboarding day, their first day, but obviously that's kind of a lot of just overview, safety, things about the cooperative. But yeah, continuing education, definitely, I would second that.
Yeah, and I think on one of those things, it differs, right? When I'm dealing with district sales managers, got responsibility for 7 to 12 salespeople, right? I can, and he's assuming a team of qualified sales professionals. It's easier for me to say this is like, well, if I want him to know how to run a sales meeting or how to do the one-on-one business plan reviews with his guys, I just have him go shadow one of my other DSMs instead of having an onboarding session, me telling him how to do it. He's going to get more from them, and then he's got a peer resource. It lightens my load. It helps him, helps the other DSM feel more important. There's just a lot of wins from that. That's harder to say when you got a machine that sits at a location and says, I got to leave that machine idle so he can go shadow somebody. Depending on the position, the shadowing thing helps a lot. It does. I know it's not the reality in every situation, but if there are ways that you can just say, if you do have to onboard them, if they do have to get these things, that mentoring, job shadowing, any way you can make that work is very helpful.
One last thing I'd like to add with that too is, a lot of us probably have policy books and SOP manuals and all these things, but when's the last time anyone's actually updated those? That we have changed so much as a lot of these cooperatives, whether it's mergers, acquisitions, new technology, all of these things. And there's a lot of just day-to-day simple processes that if the person that knew that knowledge leaves, I don't know how to do it. We had, in our case, we use AgVantage as our ERP, and the girl in the grain department that knew that thing like the back of her hand had been here 20 some years. She left last August. We didn't know how to do a thing. I spent the last year learning how to utilize that system, and we've learned a lot along the way, but it has taken so much extra time where if we update some of these SOP type of things, with Edge, which is AgVantage, their kind of digital platform as well. If we kind of update some of these little things where a new grain office associate comes in, yeah, you don't want to just hand them a book and be like, good luck, here you go. But you can help them and show them where to find some of these answers themselves and not constantly be getting questions, how do I do this? How do I do that? Provide them the tools and resources they need to succeed in their job.
Eric Ellis, Tyree Ag out of Kinsley, Kansas. Jason, you mentioned that you ramped up your accountability within your organization 4 or 5 years. If you don't mind, can you share with us what that looked like? Or if not, no big deal, but that's one thing that I struggle with, particularly. I'm sure there's other people in this room with the same thought. So
You're digging into some scar tissue, Eric, because it's not always easy. I will tell you, from a sales organization, we lacked sales structure. We lacked some consistency where we could manage it from the bigger picture items. I'm not advocating taking away individuality or independent thought, but we lacked, our org chart was a mess on sales, okay? We didn't have the KPIs in place that allowed us to measure progress in terms of whether it be sales achievement, sales pipeline, sales activity. We have those now. We have our systems that we can do that. They're too complex at the moment. You're never there. The road that was shared before, that it's a journey. We're going in the right direction. I think AgVend's going to help us keep making it simpler. But you got to have those measurements. You got to know what progress looks like. You got to have the folks engaged in the goal setting. It's got to feel like a collaboration with your team. But yet, you got to have that independent thought, but you got to have some uniformity with it, right? You got to not let those goals and objectives just be something you talk about once or twice a year. There's got to be that frequent check-in, but again, not from an overbearing way, from an area where you're seeking improvement, right? That was the biggest thing. We were lacking all of that. If you got more specifics, I'd be happy to talk to you about it, Eric, later on. It's hard to get into some of the details on that and talk about it in general, but there's a lot to it.
yeah, I figured. Thanks for your comment, or your sharing your comments with us. And then Jeff, you mentioned an internship program that you have there. One thing, that's something I'm interested in bringing to our organization. However, during the heat of battle in the summer months, it's just like go, go, go. And I've always felt that we'd be leaving them at a position of disadvantage, because they're just like hauling nurse trailers or like moving pickups around. How do you structure it during the busiest times to continue to challenge and provide a good experience for your interns?
Yeah, I think this kind of ties back into our business model a little bit too. Back in the mid-2000s, we did a complete separation of sales and operations, right? So our salespeople aren't doing operational duties anymore, and they haven't been for a long time. And our operations people aren't doing sales duties, right? And back when I started, we were doing all of it, right? We were running the fertilizer plant, we were selling the stuff, sometimes we were hauling it out, right? So that differentiation has been a really big thing in our company that I know a lot of other companies are trying to get to that point or have gotten to that point as well. So that comes back around to how we structure our internship program as well, right? So when we bring an intern in, they know they're going to be more focused, and we try to get them involved in things that they can see direct reason or value as far as impact at the grower level, and the things that they're doing. So even if it's getting a tissue sample or getting some piece of information out in the field, we help them see how that particular piece of information ties back into something else that we do at the farm gate, right? And we set that up when we bring those people in for internships. They know they're not going to be hauling nurse tanks. They know that they're not going to be delivering fertilizer or sweeping the floor when it's raining, right? Then within that internship, like I said before, we usually get entry-level interns first year. Second year, if we can get those people back, it's usually a more focused job role. So if they're interested in sales in particular, they're doing a sales internship. If they're interested in precision ag in particular, they're coming back and doing a precision ag internship. And so it's really about focusing that internship structure on what does that employee want to learn, or what does that intern want to learn, because that's what they're there for, right? They're there to get benefit out of it for future career mindset and what they want to try to accomplish in their own career. So the more value and the more responsibility you can build into your internship and give those people the opportunity to set some of their direction in the process, as far as saying, hey, I'm interested in this, so if we've got 3 days of rain, can I work on this during my internship? That goes a long, long way and brings a lot more value to the process.
Thank you.
Could you guys speak a little bit on what you think the importance of laying out expectations, both by position, but also like realistic expectations for your employees? And because I feel like that's kind of one area that we've struggled or failed to really provide to new hires, and I think that's part of the reason we have such a high turnover rate. Also, is we aren't expressing what they're expected to do, and then we're trying to enforce stuff that they don't know they need to do.
Yeah, I would say consistency in message is huge, especially from leadership, right? If those people are hearing the same thing as far as here's our path, here's our direction regularly, you don't have to enforce it as much, right? Because they start going down that path. So consistency in message is huge. That's not always possible because of some turnover. But if you can continue to see the big picture, the long-term picture, and continue to promote those little things that keep people on path, I think that's a really big deal.
I think something that helps with that too is kind of those like regular check-ins after hiring, and checking in and seeing, hey, is this what you expected? How are things going? Is there something else that you want to learn? How can we create that career path trajectory that makes sense for kind of their expectations? And then that gives us an opportunity to, give them some realistic expectations as well. If there was some miscommunication maybe during that hiring process.
Start with the why. Start with the why. The what doesn't matter. When you're laying out expectations, let them know why it's important. I've been thinking about that a lot as we roll out AgVend and how important adoption is going to be, how critical that's going to be to success. And I'd love to get input from lots of folks in here on who have got high adoption, what they did well. But as being one of the folks charged with rolling that out, I'm thinking every day on those expectations of adoption, why are we doing it? And why does it matter not to me, to that individual that I'm working with? So any expectation you lay out with somebody, I believe you got to start with the why, and why it's important to them, why it's important to the organization.
All right, well, I hate to cut off the dialogue, but I'm going to try to keep us on track here. I want to extend a huge thank you to Haylee, Jason, and Jeff for participating in the panel here this morning. I think we are supposed to go on a break now, but Tracy, I'll let you announce what's next here.
Awesome, thank you. Let's thank this fantastic panel.